there, theater makers, and welcome back to Theater's Not Dead. For the month of December, we are talking next gen theater makers. These are early career slash young practitioners who are looking towards the future and trying to figure out what the hell is this industry going to look like in the coming months, years, decades? They're innovators. They got some fresh energy they're willing to provide to this industry. And I'm so excited to be talking to three of these individuals today. So let's dive into it. Chelsea is an almost graduate of the University of Kentucky, where she is majoring in theater and arts administration, minoring in mathematics, and working towards her musical theater certificate. When she's not working on school, she can be seen in community theaters across Kentucky and Ohio, training in stage combat, working as a fight director or captain, or being an administrative force in local nonprofits. Pimpila is a Durham-based actor with a degree in theater from UNC Chapel Hill. Pimpila, I did not know that. Pimpila spends her days working as a standardized patient at Duke University, at Pure Bear, or live gaming on Twitch. Find her on all the social media or catch her live at Pimpila V. That's right, there's a V and it's capitalized and it's very cute. Dylan Bailey is a theater artist based out of Raleigh, NC. He has worked regionally as an actor and teaching artist, and graduated from East Carolina University with a BFA in theater for youth. I did not know that either. Okay, everyone, I'm so excited to have them on. They are wonderful human beings, and here are their faces. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Oh gosh. Hello, everyone. I love your background, Pim. It's so festive.
I went through many iterations till we landed on it, so
How did
it
I
was
miss
fitting.
How did I miss all of that? That's wild.
It was the many iterations of gray curtains, and then fairy lights came into play and made it all come together.
Ah, there it is. So, I'm gonna start the episode off with our most favorite question of all. How did you get started in theater? And anyone can take this first. How'd you get started in this thing?
I can go. Like theater in general.
Yes.
Okay.
Or
Well,
like your theater story. How'd you get started, and then
oh,
how'd you end up
perfect.
here?
Okay. Well, listen, I made my theatrical debut at a very young age. I was a sheep in a Christmas pageant. Yes, it involved a white sweatsuit. Yes, I ran up the whole aisle of the church, probably buying. Wait, you too, Pim? It was really great. I learned a lot from that experience. I have no idea how old I was, young enough to be the sheep in the Christmas pageant. Um, and I liked that. That was a lot of fun. In elementary school, actually, I had a music teacher who was incredible, and he randomly chose little fifth grade Chelsea and was like, "You're going to be in the honor choir. I signed you up. Go." And I was like, I was not in the school choir. I don't remember ever singing for him. It was so wholesome that and great, and I owe so much to him because he picked me for this honor choir. It like sent me on down the choir track. So I was like a choir kid for years and years and years. I did like the honor choirs, the all-state choirs, like all of that. And then I got roped into musicals. So my first musical was Annie. I was an unnamed orphan in the ensemble. It was great. So I did school musicals and school plays all through high school, and then middle school, high school, whatever. And then I didn't get serious until I got the opportunity to go to the Kentucky Governor School for the Arts, which is like a public, state-funded governor's school thing in the summer. And I was very, very lucky that I got to go to that, which was really, really great. Opened a lot of windows, showed me a lot of things. I learned a lot. And it kind of sent me down the theater, the educational theater path. And so now I'm a theater student. I'm a senior at the University of Kentucky. I'm doing a heck of a lot of things, like you read in my bio, and I'm just having a grand old time.
So from sheep to someone's fight master.
Yeah.
I love this progression. Dylan, how did you start this thing called theater?
I'm so excited because I love hearing stories like this about people's start because we find common ground. And I started, similar to Chelsea's story, I started in a Christmas pageant when I was very young as well. I was 4 years old. And it was in a Southern Baptist church, and it was out in a little past Garner, North Carolina, for those who know where that is. And it was a Southern Baptist church that my great grandfather founded. And I sang, I was a little shepherd boy, and I sang Joy to the World as a solo. And Mama Rose never had to tell me to sing out. And then for the rest of those, like my elementary years, it was mostly music. That was my in. There wasn't a theater program at that elementary school. It was mostly music. And there was also, I wouldn't say so much dance, but a lot of movement in that music class as well that I got really excited about. I remember school assemblies where I guess what now I have the vocabulary, they were probably freelance performers that were contracted to come into the schools and did these like participatory performance experiences. Which is stuff that I do now, which is really cool that it's come full circle in that way. And then my first musical was also Annie. And I was, Drake the Butler, and I had like 2 lines. I remember I said, "To the League of Nations." And that is what I remember. And then throughout middle school, I stayed with music. And in high school, I had a really passionate theater teacher who would do like 6 shows a year. I took tech theater with him, and I did a couple independent studies in like I TA'd a beginning theater arts class while I was still in high school. And it was a lot of, I did a little bit of learning about directing, and then I went to ECU and continued my studies there. And now I'm in the world. And so that's been my journey, but it's all because of educators who invested in the arts and went above and beyond.
All right, Pim, you can't mess this up. Please tell me the musical Annie is somewhere in your story.
My professional story, yes. So, okay, let's start from the very beginning because it's a very good place to start. Christmas pageant, young lass of under 5, ? Missed dress rehearsal, so didn't know that the costumes had changed. So all of the youngins were donkeys, and then I walk in with my sheep costume. So I was the lowly sheep. But yes, that, inspired me to be not part of the crowd. My following Christmas pageant, I was the Energizer Bunny, and I had 1 line. I was also sick and missed dress rehearsal, but didn't matter because I was the Energizer Bunny. Didn't have to match anyone, and I had 1 line. I walked across the stage, and I said, "His joy just keeps giving and giving," and I pounded my little drum. So that was my intro to acting. My school, I went to a private Christian school all my life, all 14 years. We had pre's. So we did not have a big drama department. We had like the yearly class shows, which were usually historical based or whatever lessons they wanted us to focus on that year. So when I could, I would participate. I never got the lead because I was very shy and very quiet in class. So apparently that denoted I wouldn't be a good actor. So that's, one of those things. But yeah, so we did those types of things all throughout college. And then I went to college. I was not doing theater. I was going to go into pharmacy. But because you can't declare a major in pharmacy, I had declared in theater for my major because I was like, I'm going to be well-rounded. As long as I get my prereqs, I can do theater on the side. And then by sophomore year, I had fully switched. Also, that summer was when I interned with North Carolina Theater for Annie. So I was doing hair and wigs. It was a hair and wig internship, not an acting internship, but it was fun because Andrea McCardle was Annie, or was Miss, my words. She was the woman. I can't remember her name, but
the lady
she is
who runs the orphanage.
Yes,
Miss Hannigan.
yes, there it is. But if you don't know, Andrea McCardle was the original Annie on Broadway, so it's a really cool like full circle moment because she was Hannigan, and that's where I met English Bernhardt. Those who know her, little local celeb. She was Annie. It was a big deal. And so then I've been doing.
Is this all a giant metaphor for the cycle of abuse that Annie literally became Miss Hannigan?
Maybe.
Oh, that's good.
It's a concept.
It is.
But I cut you off, and I'm so sorry, Pim. Please continue.
I'm almost done. So yeah, went to school for it, was a theater major, only a BA, so no fancy F in my degree. And then just jumped right into theater post-grad in the Triangle, doing educational theater on a higher level as a standardized patient. I work with professionals and learning professionals on patient interaction. So it's a lot of fun.
Wow. I just want to hit some of the points in everyone's stories real quick, especially Chelsea's, because you just triggered some childhood memories I kind of suppressed for a while. I talk about my sisters a lot at WTF, where I met these three individuals, so they are very aware that I have two brilliant and wonderful sisters, one of which is a full-ass doctor in Florida. Y'all cross y'all's fingers for her. But my doctor sister is the only one out of the three of us who got to go to our state's performing arts governor school. And it's like, so you went to this beautiful school where you can make all of these connections and foster all of these relationships. And she went for music because she's so talented in musicality nonsense. And you take all of that and you're like, ooh, I'm going to become a doctor and do medicine. So upset. So thank you, Chelsea, for reminding me that that's a thing in my life.
Was it governor school, east or west?
What's the one at Meredith?
East.
East? If anyone knows in the chat below, please.
I think
the west one's in Asheville or something, like towards like way mountainy.
Somewhere towards the mountains.
Winston. It's in Winston. West is in Winston. That's what anyway.
I think you're right.
We digress. Yeah. I never went because I didn't have a performing arts high school.
3 out of 4 of us.
Everything went to sports, but not cheerleading because cheerleading isn't a sport. It went to all the other sports, the real ones.
Chelsea.
I digress. That's a soapbox. I don't need to get on.
You let me know, because if we're diving into that, I have words to say. So you let me know.
But it would take too long.
But I just want to make it clear, yes, 3 out of 4 of us are North Carolina based. So we are talking about the North Carolina Governor School, not the one Chelsea went to.
I went to the Kentucky Governor's School.
I'm sure it's great.
I'm sure it's just as good as ours, Chelsea.
Look at where you are now.
And then the other point I wanted to make, I've said this on the show before. So Keyanna can't really sing. I'll just call it for what it is, okay? I forget whose interview it was, but there's some celebrity who was like, am I a singer? No, but I can hold a tune long enough that you don't hate me. And that's how I describe myself. But nice. I did show choir in high school, which is like baby musical theater. It's like musical theater for beginners. And I loved the experience of it, of being on stage and singing and dancing and arms, kick. Such a good time. I loved my choreographer. I loved my vocal director. High school girls are so fucking mean. Mm-hmm. And because I wasn't a little Mariah Carey ass person, my peers were very mean and kind of ruined it for me. But my God, so like choir kids, y'all are crazy, is what I'm getting to.
Choral
Like
pieces are.
these two down here, choir. And that brings us to our first question. Is that the worst segue on the show? Probably. But here we are. So we've all done work on the traditional venue-based stage. How much work have you done on a virtual stage, and do you like it?
I'll start this one.
Do
We're all
it.
just like waiting. Yeah, I haven't in many ways been lucky enough to be the actor because I have a lot of technical experience. For those who don't know, I am one of the streamers for Women's Theater Festival, but I also stream personally, as evidenced in the bio. So I've done a small handful of acting ventures, and I really enjoy it. Mainly because I get to sit for half the time. And I can like keep my script on the side. It's real handy for my laziness. But it's just like this whole new like area where like you can control the lighting and you can control like your environment as much as you can. Granted, you know, if you live with a house with your whole family and your pets, you can only do so much. But it's nice to like not have to like worry about all these other factors. You're just like, I know my stuff. I'm ready. I'm looking at my camera. I'm not looking at the camera for this. So if I cut, that's what's happening. But and so if my scene partner isn't giving me anything, it's going to be obvious because I'm going to give like 110. Like that. It's like very empowering in that way to just like, I'm going to own my stuff and hopefully my scene partner will match me. Yeah, I like it.
Chelsea, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I have done a lot of administrating of virtual theater, but I have gotten to do a fair amount of performing. I performed a fair amount this semester. Of course, I'm still in school. We didn't have a live season, obviously, so we had, a kind of a smattering of random things that like all came together and were projects for students to work on. And so I've done a fair amount of pre-recorded virtual theater. So, stuff that's being adapted for video purposes that record your bits and then send it off to an editor and then an editor does it. We did a project, called Invisible 3.12. March 12th is the day that theaters shut down, that we did with people distanced in the same space, recorded, and then that video has been edited and is being sent off to festivals and stuff like that. So I've done a fair amount of pre-recorded virtual performance, and I love the final products of all of those projects. I will say that recording a pre-recorded virtual performance is a wild experience. It can be enjoyable. It can be horrible. Like my roommates have spent hours with me, like in our front yard, in my room, in our kitchen, in like random places of me being like, ah! But it is very fun, and I'm excited to do more. That's what we're gonna have more of in the spring, and hopefully a lot of companies that I'm following, places that I worked with before, are hoping to record performances with people together in space. Of course, not with live audiences, but kind of that new version of a hybrid performance is on its way. It's coming. So that's really fun. It's all really fun. It's nice to keep doing things. And so, yeah, I'm having a good time.
All right, Dylan, it's on you.
I I have enjoyed doing virtual performance. I think it saved me a little bit in this time where everything that we knew pre-pandemic in terms of theatrical performance screeched to a grinding halt, and there was this moment of, oh, what is now? What is now, and what do we do? And then Zoom became a household word that everyone was familiar with. And then figuring out how do we use this new medium, and how do we build it from the ground up. Most of what I have done since the start of the pandemic has been readings. So not fully produced virtual theater, which is something, and I want to take this 2 seconds to just acknowledge that it has been readings. Because I don't think that's been acknowledged very much, that most of what I am seeing in the virtual world has been developmental readings, or with a limited amount of rehearsal time. I've had some readings that I've done where I got the script and there was no rehearsal. And doing that is wonderful, because I think now's a time to invest in the future of our industry and to start developing pieces for when we can return to a physical space. But when you do that, when you hand an artist a script and you don't give them a rehearsal time, it's like handing a musician a score and expecting them to sight read it. And you can only get so much from them in that moment. Actors are not magicians, and they can't completely, they can rely on some of that technique and skill that they've built up to carry them through those moments. But a rehearsal process is still necessary, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just stepping up on my soapbox here in this moment to acknowledge that. But I do like virtual theater. But also a camera can be unkind. And a challenge, I think, in film and television and Zoom theater and all of that is if you're not truthful or honest or present or committed to the moment or the intention of the scene, there's no hiding that. Whereas you can hide it a little bit behind a proscenium and rely on stagecraft and technique. So in a way, this is challenging us as artists to be even more true and more present now than we ever have been before. And I'm going to shut up now because you have other questions to ask.
No, I loved it. I love so much of the words that just came out of your face. I had the misfortune of seeing one of my own virtual performances last week, and I did precisely what Dylan is describing. I was literally in real time watching my face mimic emotion instead of sincerely showing it. And I was like, it hit me in that moment of, Keyanna is not a film and television actor. I am very much a stage actor in that aspect, and it shows. It so shows. So acknowledging that this is a new set of skills for a lot of us performers, because as again, I'm quoting Dylan at this point, right? The camera is unforgiving. This idea that every shift in our face is being picked up, whether we like it or not. And I'm an exaggerated person, okay? I have hand gestures. I'm doing the eyebrow thing, but it does not read the same way it would if I was on stage with those exaggerated facial expressions and these drawn out hand gestures. It doesn't read the same. And it's taken me, how long has it been? Like 8-9 months to finally figure that part out. So this does well, yikes, wrong word. This does segue into our next question, which Dylan's already hit on. A reading versus an actual performance, right? There are different energies as you enter those projects. So just kind of speaking on your experiences in either or, and which do you prefer? Oh, I'm going to add one more bit to that. So, experiences in either or, which ones do you prefer, and which ones do you think are going to be sustainable in the future?
I will answer the first two. I'll think about the third one while I'm answering, and then maybe have an answer by the time I get there. I have done a fair amount of both, actually. So I've done a lot of readings with a lot of different companies, a lot of different organizations, and a few productions with like costumes and like a rigged up set, and all of that. And I will say that I personally tend to enjoy the readings more. But like Dylan said, if given appropriate rehearsal time and, a script in advance, all that fun stuff, I have done a few, like, here's the script, go readings, which are fun in their own way. But I will say, as somebody who has taken a class or two, kind of dabbled in acting for the film, acting for film, trying to stage a virtual production feels very much like trying to make a TV show. And it can get very, very, you can get very, very lost in the weeds. So a lot of the production that I've done, it's like, I like rig up my little set, and then it's like 45 minutes are spent like taping marks on the floor and being like, well, you have to stand here and you have to like look at that spot on the wall. Like, it's very technical, which is very much what happens on a film set or on a TV show set. It's very like, you can't move, because if you move this way, the camera's going to go out of focus. And if you move this way, the camera's going to go out of focus. And if you like scoot an inch to the left, you're going to lose your light. Like, all of that, that's very film acty. That's not a phrase. But that's what is happening in a lot of virtual productions, because we're working with webcams, we're working with cameras. It is acting for the camera. And for me, I think I've kind of gotten bogged down in that, and that's kind of sucked some of the joy out of a few projects. So personally, I've had more fun, I think, in the readings, or the more like loose things that I've been a part of, as opposed to things that are like trying to be like productions with things happening. And as far as sustainability, I think it's hard to tell, because when all of this started, we all thought we would be back in theaters by this point. And so back then, in March, I would have said, oh well, absolutely, like, we're just going to do readings for 6 months, and then like there's no need for virtual productions, like we'll all be back. And now you're like, well, will we be back? I still think that probably readings will have more traction going forward. I think that companies, and as a society, I think we're going to keep pushing towards live productions. And so I think that constant pressure of trying to push towards that is kind of going to like undermine virtual productions efforts. But that's not to say we shouldn't do them. I think that they can be fun, and they can be really good to watch. I've watched a few that are really great. But I do think, society is going to keep pushing towards having live shows again. So who knows which is more sustainable?
So many thoughts, Chelsea, and you were worried about not being able to answer it all.
I started talking and it spewed out.
Dylan, how are we feeling about readings versus productions?
Yeah, Key, I love being on your show because you ask the big questions, and it's a lot to think about. And I feel like right now we are and we're always learning more and more about what this pandemic timetable is and how long is it really going to be until, and to quote Ragtime, we will we can never go back to before. Cue the Marin Mazzie song. Let's get the copyright. But it's true. It's true. I mean, it's not going to be it's not going to be what it was before, but that doesn't mean we can't have something really special when the pandemic is over. That's still wonderful. I think our industry is going to change in a big way. I think we are. I think there's a place for readings in development because I think it's really hard to get a new play produced. And That's a thing. It's just so hard to get a new play from the page to a reading to and I think my fear is that this might create a new step in the being produced process. But I also hope it levels that playing field geographically, where if you are a play in Kansas or Iowa or wherever, I'm so sorry, I'm listing all these states and implying something about the geographic region. But if you are not in an urban environment where theaters are that will produce a new work and take that leap of faith, that I hope the Zoom room creates an opportunity for those playwrights. But my fear is it's going to be, I write the play, I have a Zoom reading, I have an in-person reading, I get a production. That it might be that kind of trajectory where there's one more step in the process. Maybe that will make the final product stronger. I don't know. I do think there will still be I think there's value in still, even when we're in person, still doing fully produced virtual theater. Because what I hope happens for so many of these companies is that same kind of geographic leveling of the playing field where if I am in a rural environment, but I love theater, that I can watch a virtual fully produced production of the Wooster Group, or Woolly Mammoth Theater or something like that. And I'm specifically virtually subscribing from my little farmhouse to their theater company's virtual productions. I think there's possibility in that. I don't know the logistics in terms of producing. I'm not a producer, but I think there's huge possibility in that. And I hope that our industry explores that as a possibility. So those are my thoughts.
And thoughts they were. No, I do agree a lot with what Dylan's saying, that we're going to be integrating a lot of the lessons learned here. And I say here, like Zoom is a literal space, right? But this virtual theater thing is probably going to have a lot of implications that we have yet to realize, for lack of a better word. But Pim, hey friend, what
Hi.
are you thinking?
A lot of things. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. So yes, virtual theater will never replace in-person theater. A lot of my theater acting training has been to be bigger and more myself. And I love Shakespeare, and like there's certain things you can't convey on the screen. A lot of the comedy is lost when you can't use your whole body. Little things like that. So I think I enjoy virtual theater for what it is currently, and I'm grateful for it. And I do think there's a place for it in the future, but I don't think it will ever replace a live in-person performance. And the integration of that, reading or otherwise, like I've done in-person readings that were just like very by rote, and in-person readings where it's script in hand, but essentially you're memorized full costume change. And I think there's that element where I've also done readings virtually where it's like, here we are, I have my script in my Zoom and I'm reading it and I have my single costume the whole time. And I've also done very physical comedic readings where there's a lot of physicality and, really using that space where it's like, it's a really intense scene. So I'm suddenly right here versus like, I'm a fly on the wall. So, but I'm still reading from my script because it's a reading at the end of the day. So there's definitely that middle ground. I've enjoyed both. I don't think all scripts translate into either of those. So I think that's something to be aware of. And I think some are going to be better to do the more physical, and sometimes it's a cast thing. Like if you can have a full rehearsal process, maybe you can do it and make it, but keep it simple. Like Chelsea was saying, like, don't make it so taxing on your actors that they have to like find different areas of their house to move to and like tape up their floor. Just like keep it simple, a single camera shot that has a little bit of flexibility to keep it from just being so stationary. But yes, I have lots of feelings about that and I can go on for a long time. What I do like about the opportunity for readings like this, and this kind of slightly tiptoes into the sustainability of it, is that kind of geographical interaction and jumping ahead a little bit, that diversity. I love being able to be an Asian and star in Asian plays. I'm glad that I'm celebrated for that versus being like, oh, she's passing white, so she can be in this show. It's fine. And how being in readings allows me to like see scripts that I wouldn't be produced or even as a reading locally for whatever reason, or because he just didn't have time or the budget or the right director or who knows what. So there's little things like that where it's like, this is celebrating queer theater, celebrating Asians, celebrating our Black comrades, you know, whoever, where, you know, just because of the location it was written, that playwright lives, wouldn't have thought to reach out to a certain company, because it's like, why would I want to have it be produced in North Carolina when I live in Texas and I won't ever get to see it or have any say in how it's produced? But now because of Zoom, they can really like work and workshop it. And again, we don't want it to become a necessary step, but it is a great opportunity for areas where it wouldn't have been an opportunity. In that same regard, with like live performances and, you know, being able to see things like, I mean, I'm guilty of watching pirated shows online, like when people sneak in the camera. So like people want to see shows that they can't afford. So having this, like, hopefully, we know Broadway is like all about the money, but if there's like a more sustainable, audience friendly price point to like subscribe to these things, like, yeah, like not so much anymore, but I was definitely watching This Show Must Go On every weekend because of all the Broadway shows they would show every, you know, and, you know, everyone's like, they had 42nd Street a couple weeks ago. And I was like, yes, I love it. All the tap. And it's a new work. Well, not new, but a new produced work, which, you know, things I would have never been able to see that show otherwise. So there's definitely a place for it. And I'm very curious and hopeful about the future.
So Pim said spoiler alert, or she said jumping ahead. So let's go ahead and dive into one of the things that I was the most excited to speak to you all about. This concept, both Dylan and Pim hit on it really. Because virtual theater does not have the same limitations as venue-based theater, we have this wonderful opportunity to expand our networks, to expand our outreach, both for talent and for audience. And so, my question to you all is, where do we think virtual theater has opened our eyes to inclusivity and diversity? And how is this going to shape theater when we get back to stages?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the idea of using closed captions for virtual theater. I don't know how that would translate on live stage. I mean, I know a lot of productions that have the budget for are hiring like people who can sign, so that helps on that regard. And, you know, I definitely remember during Women's Theater Festival, the con series, we often had somebody signing during the various events. I think that's something that's really cool. And that's like something that's not only for theater, but like generally being pushed and just to make visual content more accessible for folks who would otherwise not be able to really engage.
I think, well, we've already talked a lot about readings, but there are more readings being done. Because of that, it's a shorter process and less time being, which has its own problems too, but less time being required for the process to come forward in front of an audience and be seen. Theater sometimes it takes months to get to that performance aspect, and that's a lot of hours. And some people just don't have the financial security to give that amount of hours and dedicate that hours to the rehearsal process. And so now hopefully people are being able to who have never had time to give to theater before, but have that talent or that desire to be in this community of artists that are getting to be seen for the first time. Another thing is it's so expensive to after when I was graduating or about to graduate from ECU, I was looking at all of these apprenticeships all over and the country that I was really interested in, and they all expected me to fly my tail out to their theaters. And I hope to God they change that for these up and coming theater graduates that are in debt because they got their BFA or their BA or whatever A. And now they have all of this student debt that they have accrued, and now you're expecting them to fly out to your theater. I Zoom them and audition them and interview them, and I hope that takes that financial. So I guess it's become more inclusive hopefully from a financial standpoint. That's something that I see a lot. And then we still see videos. Like I saw that video that trended all over Twitter of that actor's audition where the director forgot he was unmuted and talked smack about this poor guy's living room setup and was bashing we're all doing the best we can. This is my Zoom space today, and it is not a neutral background, but it's the space that I have today to Zoom from, and I think we have to be really understanding that we don't all have fancy schmancy Ethernet cables, or we don't have our green screen, and we're figuring it out, and we're investing what we can when we can. And I hope that people are more forgiving of those things.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways that virtual theater is more inclusive and is hopefully paving the way for live theater, in-person theater. Pim, you were talking about captioning, and I was realizing that because operas caption everything because they're not in English, and I was trying to think of like how one, I was trying to think if I've ever seen an opera. And then I was trying to think about how they caption and like the ways that they've like already solved that problem, and like why has nobody else started doing that? Like I have friends in the opera programs who are like, yeah, I'm the caption runner today. Like I gotta follow along in the score. Like I gotta do the German thing. Like, but like I never even you never even think about that, and you're like, wait a minute. Why don't we have a caption runner? Wait, come over here.
Should we have been doing this the whole time?
Yeah. How long have you been doing that? So, things like that I think there's a lot of really great things that are being borrowed from people are borrowing more in virtual theater, which I think is really, really great. There's that like saying that like no idea is truly original. Like all the ideas have already been thought of and you're just like repurposing all the ideas that already exist in the universe, which I think is very cool. But like there's so much borrowing in virtual theater that I think is helping because people are seeing the like good, inclusive, interesting, helpful things that this type of thing is doing, and then they're like, oh, we should do that for us, and then they take something from over here and they take something from over there. So like all of those little like institutionalized things, like Dylan was saying, I mean, finances, I mean, it's so great. Virtual auditioning is so much cheaper than I mean, like even if you want to go all out, like you like buy a backdrop, you buy a light, you like hire a pianist, like even if you went all out on a virtual audition, it would still be a fraction of the cost of like going to a conference. Like I've been lucky enough. I've gone to audition conferences. I've gone to one-off auditions. Like I've traveled to one-off auditions. They're all so expensive. And you go, and one in particular, I've had a lot of successful conferences. I went to one conference. I won't name it, but I went to a conference. It was in an expensive city. I had to fly there. There was a hotel situation. It was a high cost of living, a very high cost weekend. And I didn't sightsee. I didn't like do anything interesting. I sat on the floor of there weren't enough chairs. I sat on the floor of a very, very crowded room for like 10 hours. I went and I did my 60 seconds. I went to look for the callback list. I was called back for like one company that I wasn't interested in. And I was like, okay, cool. Cool. So that was like 48 hours. And like now, I'm getting emails that are like, hey, you want to come to our conference? Like, send us $5. Send us a video. Like, send us $15, send us a video, we'll pass it along. Like, and that's all it takes now. And, you can just, anybody, we could turn off the Zoom, turn on our cameras again, like, record a thing, send it off. People all over the country can see it. So, I mean, things are just so much more financially accessible. And, there's just so much opportunity for institutional change. Just to make things easier. I mean, I'm sure it's not fun. I mean, granted, there are merits to going in person to an audition, being in a room together, all of that. But like for initial rounds, I mean, you can't tell me that a director would prefer to sit for days and watch initial auditions when you could watch initial auditions on video and then like select people from there. I mean, it would be easier for everyone. So, I think there's a lot of things that are happening now that I hope stay. Hope they stick around.
Y'all have pointed out so many great, like, I won't even say innovations, but aspects of virtual theater that probably should get carried on, right? And a huge, huge part of it is because we are already, as a group, I'm not saying like us four, but our industry right now is so financially sensitive because there isn't enough work to go around. So everyone is being very hyper aware of costs and of fees and how artists do not have the money to pay whatever fees you are trying to get for your conference or your production or your ticket sales. I don't have it. Sorry. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic. The industry is all but a small fraction shut down. So I think this dismantling of financial elitism, and we can talk about how it's culturally elitism as well, but at least for the financial part, right? We're slowly dismantling it because if you are being smart, you are acknowledging that you can't charge people what you used to. You just can't. You trying to stay open, friend? You need to ask me for those $5 and not for that $150. And I could also share conference stories because yeah, I think it's a racket, and I kind of regret some of the money that I have put into them. But we are approaching the end of the episode. So I want to dive into one last question. We've kind of been talking about it the whole time because this is the series that we're doing, the future of the theater industry. But for formality's sake, what do you think the future of theater looks like? And is virtual theater a part of it?
Something that I really love that Dylan said earlier is the concept of like having I don't know if this is what you meant, Dylan, but this is what I interpreted. It was of having like a virtual season in addition to far down the future, even when we're back in person, of people still being able to subscribe to a virtual season or participate in virtual things, and obviously when it's safe to be back in a theater, I'm going back to the theater. Like, I'm not going to, I'm not going to prefer it, to go to a reading than to go see my favorite musical. Like, when those options are presented to me, I'm going to go back in person. I know that a lot of theater people are very excited to go back in person and will do so very enthusiastically. But I think that there's nothing wrong with you have a main stage season, you have an educational season, you have a virtual season. Maybe it's like an off, it's a new branch of your organization. It's a new thing. It's a new set of programming that you do. And I think that because I think all of the things that we've talked about, geographical, evening out geographical inequities, financial inequity, racial inequity, like so many of these things that are good that virtual theater is doing, it's not something that we want to stop. So, of course, everybody is very excited to go back in person and to keep doing what we were doing before. But I think that you can do both. Maybe there's less. I mean, obviously, there will be less virtual theater. 3 years, 2 years, whatever you think the timeline looks like. I don't know. But obviously virtual theater is going to take a decline once we can go back in person. But I hope that at least some of it sticks around. Virtual readings, at least, I think are very valuable, very fun. So, I hope that we can keep both around.
How about you, Dylan?
Yeah. I compare theater to, I love the theater. I look at the theater through these pink, rosy colored glasses all the time. But also, I had to take them off at in this time, and I've had to. We have to, and I think we all did a little bit. The whole industry has had to, because there are some things that need to get worked out, and we're working on it, and we're going to restructure. Where and that's another thing we didn't even talk so much about, like all of the anti-racist workshops that are being offered in the virtual Zoomosphere, the intimacy workshops that are being offered in the Zoomosphere, all of that kind of work that we're investing in now as an industry, I hope, so that we can come back stronger in that way too. So I've taken my rose-colored lenses off right now so that, and I think we all have, I think theater is a wonderful charcuterie board of all of these different things that we can, and everybody likes different things at the theater. When I go back into a physical theater space, I want to see Hello Dolly, but then the next day I want to see like Lynn Nada Just Ruined, or Sweat, or something like that. I want to escape, but I also want to be reminded of the human condition right now in 2020 or 2021, like that is, and I think we can have both. And I also think we can have that in a virtual theater. Like in the month of January, I get cold, and I think, and I might not always want to dress up and go to the theater. So I'm gonna sit in my bed and watch whatever the January virtual theater is, and stay in my pajamas and maybe pay a little bit less because I just bought all those Christmas presents. This is the kind of stuff that we can do in the future, and I hope that remains true. So yes, I think there's so much that the theater, I hope that we diversify what the theater is in content, in form, in all of those things. And I hope that it makes our industry stronger. I also really hope that our industry receives this is a whole nother conversation, but I really hope that we receive the support and relief that we need from this new administration, because that is, it's critical. We're reaching a critical point in this time where that support, it's got to come.
Yes.
So that's what I hope.
Pim, future thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of echoing what the lovelies have said before me. I think there's going to be some kind of in between where it's not going to be as prevalent because we will have that live person component. But I would love to see, like, whether it's solo virtual seasons or a mixture, like where there are the live performances that are just streamed. And so you get to see that. And maybe it's the opening minute performance. And if an understudy had to go on, that's the version you have to see because that's live theater, but also you get to see it from the comfort of your home. I love the thought of, even in the development process of like getting that first read through together can be challenging. And if people could just Zoom for rehearsals and getting like character work done via Zoom or script work, text work, and then you have all of this pre-work done. So once you're in the space on your feet, that saves on rental costs. If you don't have a home theater, you don't have to worry about renting all this rehearsal space because you're just in your own homes until that time when you're in the space together and having to do that in-person character stuff and building and blocking. So that kind of integration on the production side as well as the viewing side. I think it's there. I think people are going to have to be creative. People have to be willing to continue to buy in because I think a lot of people like the comfort of traditional theater and they don't like the change that they've had to adapt to. And, it might be split, but we are the future. And so if we keep pushing and reinforcing that it is a good thing and it should continue in whatever way it does. And, some theaters are probably going to be better at it than others, and that is fine. If some theaters are all traditional, that's fine. But if some theater, great. It's just knowing what your company stands for.
Yes. We are coming down to the wire. Where can people find you, and what projects are you working on really, really fast? Dylan, go.
Who goes first?
Hello, I can be found, I'm Scrappy on Twitter at Bailey_Dylan. I am on the Insta at DylanBailey96, and on Facebook you can find me at Dylan.Bailey1996. Why are they all different? The thing that I'm working on this week is I'm doing a virtual show camp of A Peter Rabbit Christmas that I adapted from Beatrix Potter's works. I've got 4 kids in it, so I'm still reworking the script to accommodate 4 kids that registered. We're starting rehearsals tonight. It'll work out great. And we're live streaming it on the Seed Art Share Facebook at 7:30 on Saturday, December 19th.
Woo! Chelsea, go.
My Instagram is at Chelsea_Russell1. And you can find me on Facebook somehow. I'm probably tagged on Women's Theater Festival somewhere. That's probably the easiest way. I am not active, but I promise I'm there. And I am working on a lot of school things in the upcoming semester. So lots and lots of school projects. We're doing a production of Midsummer and a lot of other fun things. And I'm sending out auditions for other things. So, no concrete news, but things. Follow my socials.
Perfect. Pim, go.
You can find me everywhere at Pimpila V. Twitch, Twitter, Instagram. I'm trying to get Facebook to recognize it. It's being a brat. But that's okay because I'm on Facebook the least out of all the socials. I game on Twitch. I also am just a lovable personality. If you want to spill some tea with me, that's where to do it. What am I working on? I'm doing technical streaming stuff. I am working with a colleague I've worked with, working for her school, streaming their production of Murder on the Orient Express in January. I'm also the technical consultant for Brave New Classics, one of the technical consultants for Brave New Classics' upcoming work in February, A Little Radical, which is a series of short one-acts by Alice Gerstenberg. I don't know if I said that correctly, so I am sorry, but she's an amazing turn-of-the-century feminist writer. Y'all go see it. It's going to be really great. It's all pre-recorded, but it's going to be real good. And then way in the future, I'm one of the streamers for Women's Theater Festival's production of Othello that Keyanna is also working on. That's, and lots of auditions, which is lovely that those are starting to come back in.
Yay! I am so glad that I had the 3 of you on. I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. Real quick, everyone, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the cute little bell so you know when we are going live. There is an episode being released this Thursday. That's not our usual schedule. You're welcome. It's bonus content. 'Tis the season. All right? You're going to follow us on all the social medias. You can check those in the description below. Special thanks to our sponsor, Women's Theater Festival. I think there's some people are in the chat. Hey, friends. Social media also down below, okay? We have merch. We have coffee. I wrote a blog post about why 2021 is still going to have virtual theater, and I'm into it. Check us out. Also on that coffee channel, that's where the blog lives. That's where exclusive content lives. Buy the merch. I think that's everything. We have a Facebook and an Instagram, and I am sorry I am rushing this, but Dylan is an educator, and he has a class, and by golly, we're going to get him there on time. Okay, everyone, this has been Keyanna saying, psst, theater ain't dead. See you next time.